What if the raise you are working toward is the very thing keeping you trapped? Not because more money is bad, but because of what your brain does with it the moment it arrives. Here is the pattern nobody warns you about. You earn more. You spend more. Your needs expand. Your baseline rises. And within months of getting exactly what you wanted, you are back to wanting more, carrying a bigger lifestyle, bigger obligations, and the same low-level financial anxiety you started with, just with a higher number attached to it. This is not a story about greed. It is a story about neuroscience. And by the end of this, you will never look at a salary increase the same way again. Meet Nathan, 36 years old, senior account manager at a marketing firm in Denver. He earns $94,000 a year, a number that 5 years ago, he would have considered genuinely life-changing. 5 years ago, Nathan was making $58,000. He had a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood he liked well enough, a 5-year-old car that ran fine, and a savings rate of around 12%. He was not rich, but there was room to breathe. Then the promotions came, the salary increases, the lifestyle upgrades that seemed so reasonable at each stage. A nicer apartment because the commute from the old one was inconvenient, a new car because it was time, dinners out more often because, at this income level, it just made sense. Nathan now earns 60% more than he did 5 years ago. His savings rate is 3%. His stress level is, if anything, higher than it was at $58,000. He is not living worse. By any external measure, he is living significantly better. The apartment is nicer. The car is newer. The restaurants are better. His life looks like what success is supposed to look like. And yet, Nathan told a friend recently that he feels more financially pressured now than he ever did at $58,000, that he cannot quite explain it, that every month money arrives and somehow disappears, and the number on the paycheck that once felt like it would solve everything has become simply the number he needs just to maintain where he is. Nathan is not a cautionary tale about recklessness. He made no dramatic mistakes. He simply did what every person earning more almost inevitably does. He lived as though the increase was permanent, the new lifestyle was necessary, and the next increase would finally be the one that felt like enough. It never does, and the science explains exactly why. In 1974, economist Richard Easterlin identified a paradox that has been studied, debated, and largely confirmed ever since. Wealthier nations are not significantly happier than less wealthy ones, and within nations, increases in average income over time do not produce corresponding increases in average life satisfaction. This became known as the Easterlin Paradox, and while it remains debated in its strongest form, the underlying psychological mechanism it points to is one of the most replicated findings in behavioral science. Your brain has a happiness set point, and it is remarkably resistant to permanent change from external circumstances. This mechanism is called Hedonic Adaptation, the same process we explored in an earlier episode, where the new phone becomes just your phone within weeks, operates at every scale. The new salary becomes just your salary. The nicer apartment becomes simply where you live. The better car becomes the thing you drive to a job that now stresses you out more, because the expectations have risen alongside the income. Think about that for a second. Your brain does not experience a raise as a permanent upgrade to your quality of life. It experiences it as a new baseline from which it immediately begins measuring whether the next thing might feel better. Behavioral economists use the term hedonic treadmill for precisely this reason. Running faster does not get you further ahead. It simply becomes the new speed at which you are expected to run. But here is what makes Nathan's situation more than just a happiness problem. It is simultaneously a wealth problem. When income rises and lifestyle adapts to match, two things happen that most people never connect explicitly. First, the absolute amount of income required to maintain your life increases, which means any interruption to that income is now more catastrophic than it was before. Second, the savings rate, the percentage of income being redirected toward future security, typically either stagnates or falls because the new lifestyle has absorbed the increase. Nathan, at $58,000, with a 12% savings rate, was building a financial cushion every month. Nathan, at $94,000, with a 3% savings rate, is building almost nothing, despite earning 60% more money. This is the specific financial trap embedded in lifestyle inflation. It is not just that you feel the same despite earning more. It is that you have engineered your finances to require that income, and then some, simply to stay in place. And here is what makes this genuinely difficult to see from the inside. Lifestyle inflation rarely feels like a decision. Each individual upgrade feels justified at the time. The nicer apartment was genuinely more convenient. The newer car was genuinely more reliable. The better restaurant was genuinely a good experience. No single step felt like excess, but the cumulative architecture that those steps created, the structure of obligations, subscriptions, expectations, and baseline costs, has become a cage built entirely from individually reasonable choices. Anchoring plays a critical role here. Once your lifestyle has anchored to a certain level, once the nicer apartment is simply where you live, returning to anything less does not feel like returning to normal. It feels like losing something. Loss aversion means that step backward carries twice the psychological weight of the step forward that created it, which is why Nathan cannot simply move back to the old apartment when his savings rate is concerning him. Rationally, it would help. Emotionally, it would feel like failure. The anchor set by the upgrade has permanently redefined what feels acceptable. Stay with me, because the reality of how this plays out at scale is more sobering than most people expect. Here is the pattern that should stop you. In a landmark study, Princeton researchers Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton, both Nobel Prize winners, analyzed data from over 450,000 Americans and found that emotional well-being increased with income up to approximately $75,000 annually. Above that threshold, additional income produced no measurable improvement in day-to-day emotional experience. That research was published in 2010. Updated research using more recent and larger data sets has suggested the relationship may be more nuanced, that for some people, higher incomes continue to improve well-being beyond that point, while for others they do not. The precise number is debated. The underlying mechanism is not. What is consistent across decades of happiness research is this: the relationship between more money and more happiness is far weaker than almost everyone assumes, and it diminishes rapidly as basic needs are comfortably met. The first pay increase that moves you from financial stress to financial stability produces enormous well-being gains. The fifth pay increase that moves you from comfortable to very comfortable produces almost none that last. But here is what the research does not predict, and that observation fills in. Those later income increases do not produce neutral outcomes. Through lifestyle inflation and hedonic adaptation, they often produce outcomes that are subtly negative for financial security. Think about the professionals you know personally, or are one yourself. Doctors, lawyers, senior managers, people earning multiple six figures who are, by any objective standard, high earners. Now think about how many of them seem genuinely financially free. How many of them could stop working for a year without significant stress? How many of them have discussed, at some point, feeling like they earn a lot, but never seem to get ahead? This phenomenon has a name in personal finance research: lifestyle creep. And it is not a niche problem. It is the dominant financial pattern among high earners in developed economies. A 2023 survey by Empower found that nearly 2/3 of Americans earning over $100,000 a year described themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. Not because they had suffered financial hardship, because their expectations, obligations, and spending had expanded to match, and then slightly exceed their income, exactly as hedonic adaptation predicts. And status signaling compounds the problem in a specific way. At higher income levels, the social environment shifts. Colleagues have nicer cars. Neighbors have bigger houses. The reference group against which the brain performs its automatic social comparison calculations has upgraded. And because status signaling is fundamentally about maintaining position within the kind of perceived tribe, not about objective need, the pressure to match the new social environment generates spending that has nothing to do with personal satisfaction and everything to do with made belonging and perceived standing. Nathan's new apartment was genuinely more convenient, but it was also more in line with what his new professional peer group was living in. Those two motivations were both real, and they worked together to make the decision feel fully justified, while simultaneously making it harder to undo. Here is the pattern most people never articulate, even when they are living it. As income rises, social comparison reference points rise. As reference points rise, spending pressure rises. As spending pressure rises, savings capacity falls. As savings capacity falls, actual financial security, the freedom to make choices, to weather disruption, to eventually stop exchanging time for money, decreases rather than increases. You can end up earning more money than you ever imagined and feeling less financially secure than you did a decade ago when you earned half as much. That is not a personal failure. It is a predictable outcome of not consciously intervening in a set of psychological mechanisms that run automatically and without your permission. Here is the shift that changes everything, and it begins not with a budget but with a decision made before lifestyle has a chance to adapt. Write this down. The first principle is the raise rule, and it is the single most effective intervention available at the moment of a salary increase. The moment a raise arrives, commit a fixed percentage of it, before it touches your lifestyle, to savings or investment. Research on savings behavior consistently finds that people are significantly more willing to commit future income increases to savings than they are to redirect current income. This is because the loss aversion that makes reducing current spending painful does not apply to money you have not yet received. The raise rule bypasses the psychological trap by acting before hedonic adaptation has defined the new normal. Nathan's counselor eventually helped him implement this retroactively, not by cutting his lifestyle. The anchoring and loss aversion around his current standard made that extraordinarily difficult to sustain, but by ensuring that every future increase was committed in advance. The lifestyle did not shrink. The savings finally grew. The second principle is the satisfaction audit, a practice that directly counters hedonic adaptation by making the adaptation visible. Once a quarter, write down the purchases and upgrades in your life that you made in the previous 2 years, and honestly rate how much satisfaction each one is still producing today relative to when you first acquired it. Most people find that the majority of their significant lifestyle upgrades are producing satisfaction at a fraction of their original level. The apartment you had to have is simply where you live. The car that felt like an upgrade is simply what you drive. This is not designed to produce guilt. It is designed to produce information, because the next time a lifestyle upgrade presents itself, you have concrete personal data on how quickly your own brain adapts. That data is more persuasive than any abstract principle about hedonic adaptation. The third principle is the deliberate framing of income against freedom, rather than against lifestyle. Most people frame income as the resource that funds their lifestyle. A different frame, one that research on financial well-being consistently associates with higher life satisfaction, is to define income primarily as the resource that purchases future freedom. Specifically, the freedom to make choices without financial constraint, to weather unexpected disruption without crisis, and eventually to stop exchanging time for money entirely. Under this frame, a salary increase is not primarily an opportunity to live better immediately. It is primarily an opportunity to accelerate freedom. The lifestyle might improve modestly, that is reasonable and sustainable, but the majority of the increase is directed toward the thing that actually changes the felt experience of financial life, the growing ability to choose. Nathan eventually ran the numbers. He calculated exactly how much he needed to save monthly, at his current income, to reach a point where his investment income covered his basic expenses. The number was achievable within a defined timeline. It required not increasing his lifestyle further and directing most future raises toward the goal. For the first time in years, he told his friend, he felt like he knew what the money was for. Nathan still earns $94,000 a year. His lifestyle has not dramatically changed. His savings rate is now 11% and rising. The difference is not the number. The number was never the problem. Scase. The belief that the next income level would finally feel like enough. That was the problem. And it is a belief that hedonic adaptation will defeat at every income level indefinitely, unless you consciously intervene in the process before the lifestyle expands to meet the new two. More money does not trap you. What traps you is the automatic assumption that more money should immediately become more life. If this changed how you see your next raise, save this video. You are going to want to come back to it. The income that sets you free is never the next one. It is the one you decide to use differently.